We're good now. Thank you very much.
Yes. So I want to say that I want to thank the State Department of Georgia, as well as Aprio, for sponsoring the video tribute to SAUPO partnerships. Thank you so much to the State of Georgia and Aprio for that wonderful video, sponsoring the wonderful video. Now we are in panel number 2 that goes from 10:30 to 11:30 for 60 minutes, 1 hour, sponsored by KSU Coles College of Business and Southern Polytechnic College of Engineering and Engineering Technology. Southern Poly's Dean, Dr. Ian Ferguson, will be the moderator of panel number 2. And we have wonderful speakers, Mr. David Kirk, President and CEO of Murata Electronics, Ms. Jessica Cork, SAUPO Advisor, Vice President for Public Relations, YKK Corporation of America, Ms. Wendy Liu, Partner at International Tax Services, and Ms. Candy Nip, Director of Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, joining us from New York City. I like your background, Hong Kong background. Thank you so much. I apologize, Marcy Sperry cannot join us. She has a family emergency today. So, Dean Ian Ferguson, your panel has started. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are at this particular time. So my name's Ian Ferguson. I'm the Dean of the College of Engineering. I joined this institution about 1.5 years or so ago. Traveled extensively in Asia, been visiting professor and worked at Taida Taiwan Dashu in Taiwan. Spent time actually in Guangzhou University of Science and Technology for a couple of summers in Wuhan, a place that many people seem to know now. Also been visiting professor in Chennai, India. So it's a pleasure to be involved with this. And I know whenever I go out to Asia, the people I meet with there are always just tremendous hosts. I believe May had already introduced this list of distinguished speakers that we have today, and we're really looking forward to your contribution. I think based on the timing we have, since one speaker has dropped off, you can probably all have at least about 7 or 8 minutes or so to give your introductory comments. And these are in the areas of global supply chains, business and partnerships. I'll be keeping an eye on the time, so if we run a little long, I'll let you know at some point, and we'll still leave about 15 minutes for questions at the end. I think with this, just based on the order I have here, we're going to start off with David Kirk. We look forward to hearing your comments.
Yeah, appreciate it, Ian. Thank you. And listening to your accent, you're probably not far from where I grew up. So.
Yeah, and actually I live on a place called Kirk Lane, which Kirk is the name for church in Scotland. So.
Yes, yeah. I grew up just north of Glasgow, so so let me just a little bit background. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk and work with a company called Murata Manufacturing Company. I actually work here in the Americas, run the Americas out of Atlanta. But Murata is one of those companies that you may never have heard of, but I can guarantee you that you are using many hundreds of our products every day. We actually manufacture electronic components. One of our main products is called the ceramic capacitor, and we're the world's largest. We manufacture over 100 billion per month. Okay, just to give an idea, 100 billion per month. So very important. A typical smartphone would maybe use 1,000 of those products. You know, a high-end automobile could use somewhere as many as 30 to 50,000 of these components. So it's a key fundamental part of electronics, and as I said, the world's largest manufacturer. So when we come to thinking then of supply of products, very interesting. We have multiple manufacturing sites throughout the world, but I think most people think of these typically the price is priced per thousand, because we actually have multiple. I'm sorry, is there something wrong with the audio?
I can hear you fine. I believe others can as well.
Okay.
I'm hearing you.
No problem.
Yeah, I think I see some nods, so I think we're good.
Yes. So the supply of these products, multiple sources all over the world, they're typically sub 1 cent per part. So it's how many digits after the decimal point is the pricing on these products. So a lot of people don't give them too much thought. They can get them, they're a commodity product, that type of thing. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's very critical component and very important. And so, as I said, multiple locations are around the world to manufacture and supply. But if a company really just has the traditional, what's your price, what's your delivery, those types of things, that's where they can get themselves in some troubles. And here in the pandemic, what we've actually seen is immediately there was some significant drops in demand, and I'm saying significant drops. So some marketplaces went to maybe only 10% of their original demand, not a drop of 10%, only 10%. So very sudden drop, and in some cases, force majeure letters were issued. And force majeure in our kind of thinking is, well, you're not really then a partner. You've got that very traditional kind of supplier customer relationship. So very important to actually have that depth in your supply chain. And many people, I think, also recognize when you're shipping some of these electronic, components, that it's, freight, and obviously it is. But when the pandemic hit, the people stopped flying, and then there was a sudden realization that the passenger planes, flew a lot of cargo. And that significant drop, suddenly then the supply chain, the actual freight, significantly dropped as well. So I think one of the gentlemen earlier actually talked about a K-shaped recovery. In our industry, it was really V. The business just dropped off the table in April, May. Car production basically shut down for a number of weeks. And then trying to recover. And in some cases, in manufacturing, the capacities are just not there. You can't go from 10% utilization to 150 to 200% utilization. So some very significant challenges. The pandemic, I'd say, is just one area, but we obviously have seen a lot of natural disasters that continue to hit, whether it's an earthquake, or here even recently the ice storm in Dallas. So a number of things continue to actually challenge the supply chain. For us, I would say very interesting, really traditional Asian way is to really build a very deep partnership. And so when things actually occur, you have somebody to call, somebody to talk to. Traditionally, you would go visit, have that face-to-face. And in this case, we didn't have the chance for face-to-face, but we still had, a lot of good connections, a lot of deep partnerships with the customers, and could actually talk through a lot of the different issues. And so I think when you actually, the previous panel talked about return to normal, whatever that normal looks like. I think in the Asian culture, that face-to-face is still going to be very, very important. Make sure you continue to build that relationship. Where I think you'll see some differences is people will stop just asking for price delivery and those types of things. They will actually start to go deeper into the supply chain and ask you, what is your BCP, your business continuity plan? And, how are you as far as your, SDGs, sustainable development goals? And really actually try and get that much deeper understanding of the company's capabilities, what they're doing as far as capital expansions, but really truly understand, can they actually handle some of these issues that are coming at us right now? At Murata, here in the Americas, we did have a BCP. When we actually had the disaster, we dusted it off. We did have a pandemic portion, and it wasn't truly very helpful, but it did guide us to form a crisis management task force team and how we would actually communicate with customers, employees, and so on and so forth. And so right now we see, very positive signs. Obviously, everybody needs an electronic gadget of some kind, whether it's a tablet, a phone, a laptop. Huge change in the automotive market as well. I think people talked about the moving out of the cities. Moving out of the cities means more vehicles and actually higher end and different type of vehicles. Not so much in the EVs yet, but more back to high-end SUVs with lots of options and so on and so forth. So, but for us, a lot of learning and really getting back to building deeper partnerships and make sure that you've got the supply chain covered. So that's my opening comments, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, David. I think one of the things I discovered from your talk that we have a lot more ceramic capacitors in our life than many of us actually realized.
It would be absolutely staggering for you to understand how much Murata is in your life. Yes. Yeah. I
think that's certainly interesting. It's good. So next I would call on Jessica Cork, and just to remind you, she's from YKK Corporation. Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. And as Dean Ferguson, you need to mute because I'm getting some background. All right, thank you. So I'm Jessica with YKK. I'm Vice President of Community Engagement and Corporate Communications. And I'm really excited to tell you the YKK story today. For those of you who are not familiar with us, you just need to take a look at your favorite pair of jeans. We are best known as being the leading zipper manufacturer. We manufacture approximately 10 billion zippers per year, along with a host of other fastening products in 72 countries around the world. So, in thinking about, this topic, the first thing that really came to mind, you might recall that 2 years ago, the Business Roundtable, which is America's most influential group of corporate leaders, they issued a new mission statement. You might remember it. It got a lot of press at the time. It redefined the purpose of a corporation from one that exists principally to serve shareholders to one that benefits all stakeholders, including employees, suppliers, customers, and communities. And so today, we are talking about partnerships and in the supply chain. And I remember all of us at YKK at the time when that statement came out, the press said that that was such a radically different statement. But at YKK, our reaction really was, what took so long? Because we've actually been thinking that way for the past 87 years. We've been guided by our cycle of goodness philosophy, which says that no one prospers without rendering benefit to others. That was something that has been passed down to us by our founder, Tadao Yoshida. And he always taught us that the goal of YKK is not to make a profit, but rather it's to use our ingenuity to create new value for our customers which leads to their success, and that will allow us to reinvest in our company, our employees, and also our local communities. So anyway, YKK has been really about partnerships from the very beginning. But at the same time, as a supplier of zippers and other components, we are part of a massive supply chain. So we manufacture in 72 countries around the world. And of course, we are supplying customers in far more countries than that. But what I want to talk to you today is not really the global story of YKK, but instead I'd really like to tell you YKK's Georgia story, because I think that really illustrates the particular challenges being faced by American manufacturers when they're trying to compete with global supply chains. So YKK entered the US market in 1960 as a zipper distributor. So we were up in New York City and we were importing our zippers from YKK Japan. And by the early 1970s, we had 10% market share in this country. We had 5 small assembly plants across the US, but we were still importing our zipper tape and wire from Japan and assembling. But we really knew that the best way to compete was to invest in the United States and build a vertically integrated production plant here. So at the time, the US textile industry was gradually moving from the northern part of the country to the southern states. So we were really looking at the Southeast as a place to build YKK's new plant. And actually, Jimmy Carter was governor then, and it was his vision to invite foreign companies to invest in the state of Georgia. So we were already looking at Georgia for a number of reasons. It had a lot going for it. You know, of course, there's the port that is in Savannah. There is a major international airport, interstate highways, and state-supported worker training for new employees. But again, we've got to get back to the theme of partnerships, because what really sealed the deal was the meeting between then Governor Carter and YKK founder Tadao Yoshida. Governor Carter was able to convince Mr. Yoshida that Macon, Georgia was the best place for his plant, and they became fast friends. In fact, the families still remain very close to this day. And so that's how YKK came to choose the state to open our plant. So ground was broken in 1973. We had 50 employees that began production of just 4 zipper items in 1974. So things were really tough at the beginning, but YKK's domestic market share began to grow as we gained major American customers. And in 1979, YKK purchased an additional 250 acres of land in Macon for an expansion. So for many years, we were just growing and growing and growing. Business was doing great. At one point, YKK Macon was the largest YKK manufacturing facility outside Japan, 1.1 billion zippers being manufactured every year in Georgia, servicing customers throughout the United States. But then the supply chain system really changed. So when YKK was considering building a factory in the United States, 95% of apparel sold in the United States was manufactured here. But in the 1990s, as you may already be aware, apparel companies began to develop vast global supply chains, and they started moving overseas where employees have lower wages. And as a result, today, just 2% of the apparel we buy is manufactured in the United States. So you can imagine the impact on our business in Georgia. In the late 1990s, 59 brand name jeans manufacturing plants were located in the Southeast. And I'd like to ask you a quick question. Can you guess how many of those jeans plants are still open, or actually were even still open just 5 years after that? And the answer is actually 0. They had all closed. So we were competing not with other domestic zipper manufacturers, but with imported garments. And as a result, our sales started dropping significantly. And we realized that most of our apparel customers had left the United States, and they would not be returning. So this period was really difficult for YKK. Our employees had to make a lot of sacrifices to keep things going. But we turned back to our philosophy. Our founder had taught us that our goal as a company is to fulfill the cycle of goodness. And part of that is using your ingenuity to create new value for your customers. So we had to innovate. We knew that we could no longer focus on apparel, and instead we worked to grow, to identify growing markets that would not leave the United States. So we created industry groups and reassigned our sales, marketing, and product development staff to all of those industries. And we asked them to become experts in those industries and really to develop very deep partnerships with them. We would develop new products that we could manufacture and sell to them, working in collaboration with those customers. So if you think about it, it's a pretty incredible story because we started with just 4 zippers for the apparel industry, but today we manufacture very highly technical products for such industries as the automotive industry. The car you drive probably has 15 to 20 YKK products that we manufacture and make in Georgia. We manufacture heat and fire resistant zippers for firefighter gear, airtight and watertight zippers for chem bio suits. We work closely with the entire space industry. So people's lives really depend on the high quality products that we are producing. And in fact, our growth in those highly technical industries has made up the loss in the apparel sector. And today, the Macon plant manufactures more than 65,000 miles of fastening products annually. We also take advantage of the Port of Savannah to export our products to affiliate companies and customers in over 40 countries. And also in Macon, we have one of only 3 YKK brass foundries in the world, and we supply YKK companies with brass wire globally right out of our plant in Macon. And then at the end, I would definitely like to also touch on the importance of our partnerships with the communities where we have operations. So in Georgia, that includes Macon and also Dublin, Georgia, as well as our communities in California, Kentucky, and Alabama. They have all been tremendously supportive of us over the years, and we take that partnership with local communities very, very seriously. Actually, when we faced really tough times in Macon, we immediately informed the mayor of Macon of what was going on. And he said that later that really starkly contrasted with his experience with another Macon-based plant that suddenly announced it was closing its doors and putting over 2,000 employees out of work. And he didn't know anything about it until that happened. So we don't think we would have survived that difficult time period that we faced without the support of our local community and also our talented and innovative workforce that really worked tirelessly to figure out how to come out of the challenges. So today, I'm really proud to say that we are thriving and with the benefits going to our 3 partners, which we consider to be our customers and suppliers, our employee, and our local communities. So that's the end of my opening comments, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Jessica, thank you. So I heard about this great transition from shareholders to stakeholders and the fact that you were one of the forerunners in that area. And the other theme that also came up with David was the value of relationships, you know, both into the community and with your vendors and other suppliers around you. Our next speaker is Wendy Liu, and she's a partner at International Tax Services and also a sponsor through Aprio. So Wendy, we look forward to hearing your contribution.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Also, I want to thank Dr. Gao and the SAUPO for inviting me, and I'm honored to be here. My name is Wendy Liu. I'm the tax partner in Aprio's international practice, and I also lead the Chinese practice in the firm. Aprio is one of the top 50 accounting and tax business advisory firms in the States. And I'm also the member of SAUPO Advisory Board and a member of Hong Kong Association of Atlanta. So speaking about the global supply chain, the issues surrounding the global supply chains are always the hot topics, I believe, and they're always in the center of the global business. And lots of my clients, they are multinational manufacturers or cross-border distributors or logistic companies. So most of them, they manufacture or import products from China and other Asian countries and Latin America, and then sell them to the United States. So from what I have seen during the pandemic, most of these companies, they were impacted by the COVID to some extent. And many organizations have suffered from the government shutdown, the staff shortage or losses during the COVID. And some of the retail stores got hard hit by the COVID as well at the beginning. And lots of cross-border greenfield investment projects in the US have been held off due to the international travel restriction. And the activity in China, US cross-border M&A transactions have also been decreased due to the international travel restriction. But on the other side, the pandemic actually boosts the sales of the PPE products and the cleaning products. So my client who sells PPE product actually had the best year ever in 2020. There's no doubt that the COVID has posed significant challenges for supply chain globally. And it continues to slow or temporarily stop the flow of the raw materials and finished goods and disrupting the manufacturing. However, my client, they adapt the changes pretty fast during the pandemic. I mean, they launched the e-commerce pretty quickly, and consumer the consumer purchase habit also switched from shopping in physical stores to online shopping swiftly. So, and some of my distribution companies and logistic companies, they adjust their schedules and the work style to basically give more flexibilities and resilience to the process. So in the consumer markets, there was not much disruption except a short period of time in the early pandemic. So for those services companies in the supply chain, they apply, just like our firm, we apply all means to keep the business moving. Like we use virtual conference, Zoom calls, team meetings to keep the visibilities and connection with the clients and the team. So from what I have seen on what happened in the supply chains world, the supply chain between the US and China continue to grow strong. And China continues to be the world's largest manufacturing country, and this has not been changed. I think it's because China still has the most sophisticated and complete supply chain and has the resources that can offer a complete product solutions and timely delivery, particularly in the consumer products. So pandemic didn't create new challenges for supply chains, but rather accelerate the business reform that the supply chain company wanted to do a long time ago, such as launching e-commerce, developing touchless technologies. You see AI now is booming, digital marketing has become pertinent to the business. The traditional supply chain model is switching to a little like digital supply chain model. And my client, they start investing more into different type of digital technologies so they can kind of navigate the disruption and respond faster to the volatile supply and demand. So during the pandemic, many businesses suffer financial loss during the shutdown. My firm, Aprio, has helped clients to obtain millions of PPP loan, R&D tax credit, and also refundable employee retention credits. And this cash flow has been essential to the supply chain companies to navigate during the tough time. So what we will expect after COVID, just my own opinion, I believe that the global supply chain model has not been fundamentally changed. Pandemic just changed the way people do business. I would think digital marketing and e-commerce are irreversible, and e-commerce will continue to grow in the next 2 or 3 years. So let me quote a sentence from my client in the logistic business. He told me that in the core business of supply chain is basically to get the customer the products they want at the lowest cost and in a faster way. And in his particular business, he's doing the e-commerce, logistic, that kind of business. He says in the next 2 or 3 years, he's gonna looking for more warehouse to acquire. So this is a good news to the realtor. So due to the booming of the e-commerce, these kind of logistic company, they're looking for setting up more points in their distribution network. They are acquiring more and more warehouses. And he told me at this point, the warehouse like Amazon, those distribution center warehouse, they're all full. So, and the other thing is, I would think the AI and the robotic process automation might be a trend or will be a trend, I think so. And how to effectively utilize the data and make it useful for decision making becomes critical to the future supply chain business. And I think the M&A still play a very important part of the global supply chain. It's going to pick it up very soon after the pandemic. And even during the pandemic, I continue to get inquiry from Chinese manufacturing and distribution company and ask me for help to go IPO in the US market. So before I end my sharing, I wanted to mention that Aprio, as one of the leading CPA firms in the state, we have at least 40 plus Asian team members from China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Nepal, and other Asian countries that represent about 8% or more of the total workforce in the firm. And we recognize the rise of the violence against the Asian community, and we condemn this action. And last year, we added fundamental number 10, value differences. And Aprio, we believe that attracting, developing, and retaining a base of employees that reflects the diversity of our customers is essential to our success. So it's a great honor to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to share my observation and the comments from my frontline supply chain clients. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Ferguson.
Yeah, well, Wendy, you're very kind to call me Dr. Ferguson. Just call me Ian, along with the other panelists. You guys are very, very kind. So what I'd heard in your presentation really is that the last year has accelerated us towards things that people had already planned on doing. And your sense is that we're going to continue down that line, and it will be interesting to discuss this as a group, especially connecting that back into pre-existing relationships and how those may change within our communities. I think our next speaker is Candy Nip. She's from the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office, and she's speaking to us from New York or somewhere else.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning, everyone. I'm speaking to you from New York, and I would like to first thank SAUPO and Dr. Gao for inviting me to speak at the forum today. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to address the topic Hong Kong and global supply chain. This is always a fascinating topic because Hong Kong has so much to offer. Our geographical location, our airports, our seaports, our institutional strengths, our efficiency, our international connections, and much more. First of all, I will give you some brief background and a little update on how Hong Kong has been doing in this supply chain, performance, and logistics sector. Trading and logistics is among the 4 pillar industries in the economy of Hong Kong. It accounts for about 21% of our GDP. For 10 consecutive years since 2010, the Hong Kong International Airport, HKIA, has been the world's busiest cargo airport. Last year, despite the COVID crisis, our cargo throughput stood at 4.5 million tons, which was down by about 6% compared with 2019. The air traffic movement for freighters, in fact, recorded an increase of 18%. The Port of Hong Kong, the seaport, is also among the busiest in the world. Our port handled about 18 million TEUs in 2020, which is about 1.8% down compared with 2019. Such impressive performance at both our airports and seaports, even during the pandemic, was of course in part due to the worldwide shipment of PPEs and now probably the vaccines, and the rapid growth in e-commerce in recent years, as pointed out by previous speakers. At the same time, it also demonstrated the resilience and robustness of Hong Kong as an international aviation and maritime center. So looking ahead, according to the latest forecast of the IMF, the global economy could potentially grow by 5.5% this year. We are particularly optimistic about the economic recovery in Asia. In 2020, in fact, China was the only major economy which recorded a positive growth at around 2.3%. Once COVID-19 is behind us, I believe the logistics industry worldwide will be on an exponential growth formula. The presently suppressed tourism and consumer demand-driven logistics will see the strongest ever rebound. A friend of mine in the air cargo industry recently joked that anything that has a pair of wings and could potentially look like or function like a freighter is set to fly. According to IATA, the International Air Transport Association, e-commerce has already revolutionized the logistics sector. The behavioral change of consumers during COVID-19 is expected to have a fundamental impact on the industry. Worldwide e-commerce retail sales grew by almost 30% in 2020, with a total value of some $4.3 trillion. It is forecast to jump further to over $5 trillion this year. Hong Kong will continue to be one of the key players in the global logistics and supply chain. I'm going to highlight a few recent developments that may be of interest to you. Our airport, the Hong Kong International Airport, has always been among the best airports in the world. But we're not living on past laurels. Our airport has been constantly working to improve in order to capitalize on new market opportunities. Respectively, in 2018 and 2019, our airport was recognized by IATA as a certified airport in handling pharmaceutical logistics and perishable logistics. These certifications were awarded in recognition of our airport's competency and preparedness in handling these high-value and temperature-sensitive products according to stringent global standards. In fact, such capability sure came in handy during the pandemic. With substantial investment in state-of-the-art technologies, such as fully automated cargo handling system and RFID truck control system, all the air cargo operator at our airports could achieve an incredibly tight cutoff time for export cargoes at only 3 hours before the scheduled time of departure. Another interesting development, DHL's expansion plan in the Hong Kong International Airport, its Central Asia hub. This project is expected to complete in 2022, next year. When operating at its full capacity, the annual throughput of DHL after the expansion will go up by 50% to about 1.1 million tons per year. This expansion will further solidify Hong Kong's position as the core hub of DHL's global and Asia-Pacific regional network, handling more than 40% of its total Asia-Pacific shipment volumes. In addition, a new premium warehouse at the airport will commence operation in 2023. This facility will boost the supply of premium warehouse space in Hong Kong by around 15 to 20%, enabling us to further capture the booming in e-commerce. On the maritime side, our port connects to over 600 destinations worldwide, with about 280 container vessel sailings per week. Apart from enhancing our port capacity, the government has also been devoting a lot of resources to develop port logistics. Additional land was released for development of multi-story port backup and modern logistics facilities. And all of these new facilities are designed to take advantage of the latest advancement in automation and robotics. We have also been promoting the development of high value-added maritime services in Hong Kong, including ship agency and management, shipbroking, marine insurance, and maritime legal and arbitration services. Zooming out a bit now, thanks to our superb geographical location and our economic integration with the mainland of China, Hong Kong is also set to benefit from the abundant regional growth opportunities. In November last year, 15 Asian economies signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, called the RCEP in short. This is the largest free trade agreement in history ever, which covers 1/3 of the world's population and GDP. Apart from the closer economic partnership agreement with mainland China, Hong Kong has signed free trade agreements with most of the RCEP members, including the 10 ASEAN states, Australia, and New Zealand. Before I finish, I would also like to highlight the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area development. The Greater Bay Area development comprises Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 major cities in Guangdong. It aims to harness the collective strengths of the region. With a population of over 70 million and per capita GDP of some $23,000 US, this area is looking to rise as one of the world's strongest regional economy. Hong Kong, as the international window of mainland China, will connect this economic area of huge potential with the rest of the world. I hope my sharing today has given you some insights on Hong Kong's role or perspective in the global supply chain. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us should you need more information on any specific areas. Thank you very much. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend ahead after the seminar today.
Well, Candy, thank you very much. One of the things I also heard that was shared by the previous speaker was about the growth of warehouses, and it seems like e-commerce, we're moving away from the mall to the warehouse, which is somewhat interesting. We now have about 15 minutes to have a discussion and questions. Obviously, people who are in the panel can just ask those questions directly. There's also the chat, which I have open, but I'll start off with one question to get us going while people think a little bit. And what I love is the expertise of the panel. And my question is in the next decade, which countries will be the world's top economies and why? So selfish, I want to see where to invest my money in the future. So where is that growth going to be?
This is David Kirk. I'll take a shot at your question there, Ian. I think, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I think the U.S. is going to be one of those economies. There's a lot of activity for the electronics industry specifically. I think this pandemic has highlighted some issues, especially in the semiconductor space, the length of the supply chain, the technologies, and so on and so forth. And so I think you're going to see very, very significant investment here in the U.S. Very famous Taiwan Semiconductor. It will have a factory. I think it's going to be about 2024 in Arizona. Intel's making some big investment in Arizona, and so that semiconductor technology, that's the heart and soul of all these electronic devices, and trying to pull that back a little bit closer. That coupled with the whole infrastructure, just the fundamental infrastructure as well in the Americas. But I think I would certainly consider U.S. as one of those.
And that's good to hear you say. And very often we tend to push out from where we are to look at other opportunities rather than looking inwards. Would another panel member like to add into this discussion?
This is Wendy. I think this is more of like a regional type of concept. Like if you say one particular country, and of course I think US would be one of the top. The other top economy community would be EU. Of course, the Asian Pacific, APAC, what we call APAC, EU, APAC, US, and Latin America. That's what I would think would be the top 3 or 4 economies in the world in the next few years.
The beginning of the global supply chains.
From the global supply chain.
Right. So when you talked about these regions, we talk about global supply chains. So so from your perspective, this is going to be a more regional interaction. Do you think that's going to be driven by policy, or is it going to be driven by commerce? Or where do you think the balance is between the two? And again, this is up to the
just speaking for the US and China, this supply chain, there are several layers that would affect the supply chain. Of course, the politics, policy on the top, and also the demand in the market also drive the supply chain process. So keep in mind, in China, that you have all the politics on top, but people still need, let's say, some luxury brand name from the US. They still purchase it. And on the US side, they still need the household items. They still need to import it from China. Let me give you an example. At the end of 2019, there's a almost like 25% increase the customs duty. Did it stop the import product from China? No. It ended up there are more import from China if you look at the statistics. So that is like something kind of like a disconnections between, let's say, politics is like that, but people, they still have their demands. So that's why I said the supply chain have not been fundamentally changed. China is still one of the biggest manufacturers in the world.
Right, thank you, Wendy. Any other thoughts on this before we move on to another question that's come in?
Sure, I would like to weigh in. I would just like to agree with David and his assessment that U.S. will definitely be one of the the big players here, and we are seeing within our industry, I think especially on a regional basis too. So the U.S., but then of course Mexico and Latin America as well, and seeing increasing talk among our customers of possibly reshoring or nearshoring, or at least more interest than there has been in the past with bringing some of those supply chains back either to the United States or at least to Mexico and Latin America. So we're very optimistic, for the future growth in this region as well.
Right, thank you. We've had a question come in from Yusun Chan. Do you want to share your question with the panel, please?
The question is to Cindy. Do you feel that the increased tension between China leadership and Hong Kong will adversely affect the Hong Kong business, at least in the short term?
And I may take this question first, and the other panelists could feel free to supplement. We can all see in the past couple of years, a lot has been going on in terms of Sino-US relationship. It's been quite tough, but if you ask me, the relationship or the ties on all fronts, economic, cultural, social, between China and US and Hong Kong are just too strong for anyone to give up on each other in this relationship. Because of COVID, there are a lot of things that we cannot do. For example, traveling. We would like to bring the business sector, people who are interested in investing in Hong Kong to visit Hong Kong. And we believe that they will see for themselves the opportunities that Hong Kong has. One is the Greater Bay Area that I just mentioned in my speech, that we could provide for investors with a huge market. And also in many other different areas like IT, environmental science, and of course, logistics and supplies is always one of the strengths of Hong Kong. So once we will be able to do that, I think it will give the business sector or investors more confidence and more certainty in deciding on how to go forward. At the moment, you're just relying on the news, and news usually are not too positive or not too fun these days. So it's a bit harder. But for us, we will try to, as a representative of Hong Kong in New York or in US, we will try to bridge the gap, try to fill people in with the information, and try to offer as much assistance as possible. So I hope I answered the question. And to you, Ian.
Thank you. So as a number of people indicated, it's the relationships and the depth of these relationships that will continue to develop him. The question is, currently the global supply chain is experiencing, sorry, I just had something flip up on my screen that came over the text. I apologize for that. Currently, the global supply chain is experiencing peak demands for computer chips, pandemic-related supplies, but it cannot maintain a peak supply all the time in a normal market. What's the best way to maintain the balance between the efficiency during normal time and some unexpected demand in the future? So they're asking about, we're managing for peak in a very specific areas just now, relative how do we manage for when that broadens out?
I'd like to take the PPE related portion of this question. Maybe David can weigh in on the computer chips, but something interesting. So YKK is very involved with the PPE industry and was very involved with the PPE industry prior to the pandemic. But one thing that has happened with the pandemic is it has identified certain issues that the US does have with the PPE supply chain, most of which was coming from China, especially in terms of the face masks and the gowns. And all of you, may be very aware, especially early in the pandemic, there was a severe shortage of the ability to be able to get PPE into this country, and that has actually continued, off and on as those supply chains either contracted or reopened. So what the textile industry as a whole in the United States, the remaining textile industry, has been working very hard throughout this pandemic to really speak with our elected officials and try to make sure that there remains a US-based supply chain that is robust and able to keep that consistency for certain products that are critical to maintaining, the health of people who are working in the hospital and also the general population. So that's one thing that's really been highlighted. I mean, we never would have thought that this was a problem prior to the pandemic. So that's one way, at least in terms of something like PPE, that we're trying to level things out, is that China and other Asian countries may be able to make sufficient PPE for normal times, but for times like this where there is a peak, the supply chain was simply not sufficient to keep enough supply coming in. So we're trying to build up the US capabilities in those areas as well.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. David, it's been transitioned over to you to close out.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know Jessica well, so we go back and forth. So, but I think very good question. The challenge really is the capacity. Is there this infinite capacity or unlimited capacity? And there really isn't. We have invested about $3 billion the last 3 years, consecutively, and that's to increase our capacities. But our capacity is to support about 40% market share. We're not increasing capacities to take 100% market share. We don't want 100% of your business. So a good strategy, I think, from the person that asked the question would be to obviously get that relationship, have a long-term agreement with a supplier, but split that share. Do not put 100% to a single supplier. Would be very happy to take 70, but our worldwide share is about 42%. But then also, you should actually utilize, some of the local electronic distribution. I think has been touched on here. It's not a bad idea to have some maybe commodity products, in country, in a distributor. They give you, next day deliveries, those types of things. So really try to find that balance. But the long-term agreement, the sharing of your forecast, the expectations, that needs to be done significantly in advance, because to bring on additional capacities probably is a year and a half, maybe even longer. I think, as I mentioned, the TSMC factory has been announced, but it's not coming online until 2024. So it really comes back to that long-term partner relationships and sharing of good, valid information. But those would be some of my suggestions.
Well, thank you, David. I think with this, what we want to do is I'd like to thank David, Jessica, Wendy, and Candy for the contributions here. So anybody who can unmute at this time, if you can unmute, and then we can just thank them in the way that's normal. So thank you. And like we say, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody in person in the near future at this meeting next year, if not before, when you come and visit campus. And with this, I'll hand it back to May. Thank you very much.
All right. Dr.Jag, Sheth.
Yeah, hi, how are you, May?
Welcome to SAUPO, and you have so much wisdom. So you've attended most of the SAUPO today. What wisdom can you share with us about what we should expect for the future?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak. This is the first time I'm speaking at a virtual conference. It's going quite well so far, what I heard. I think the pandemic will have as dramatic an impact in rechanging the economic aspects of the world, but also geopolitical aspects, as World War II did, Great Depression did, for example, and probably more recently, the economic recession of 2008 and 9. I see the impact on three major areas, and I'll focus on each one of them to give some comments and observations. The first one is the impact on pent-up demand. The pent-up demand worldwide, not just in America or advanced countries, is so large, and it will not be limited to tourism, travel, therefore benefiting airlines or the entertainment industry, for example, which are very large, physical-based, such as sports, etc. But it will be impacting all traditional businesses, such as garments, for example, appliances, and automobiles. Now, pent-up demand will be there, but the supply will be under so much of pressure, at least in the short run. So, for example, if you say US is going to grow at 6.5% in the second half of 2021, China will grow even more, and China has a very large domestic market now, not just the export market. Countries like India are also having a huge economic growth of their own, and other countries. My view is that therefore supply chain will be most critical to manage. And the supply chain management is going to be more difficult in the short run, because supply chain is totally disrupted. And so ultimately, we think supply chain will get more and more distributed, as I think the panel talked about before, where the same global enterprise has supply chains in different regions of the world, if not different countries of the world. That will be the only solution. There will be a permanent change in the supply chain function from being highly concentrated in one nation or in one geography to more and more distributed supply chain, which avoids the risk because I can transfer from one capacity to the other on a global basis. As the semiconductor industry is trying to do, but that'll be true of garment industry, that'll be true of appliance industry, no matter what you look at, which has its own implications about logistics and how the logistics will be reshaped in the process. The second major area is going to be on workplace, people working. And there are 2-3 components. First of all, the workplace itself will be redefined more by regulation. Pandemic will bring about regulatory approach, policy approach to say, if you're going to have workers work in a given factory or work in a given office environment, here are the ways they have to be organized, like social distancing, mask wearing, safety, sanitation of the workplace, etc. So that'll be very key. It'll be more driven by regulation and public policy, hopefully on a global basis. So maybe some United Nations agency can provide guidelines and standards that everybody obey. However, the work will be definitely more automated. This is the time when, during the pandemic, at least because of its persistence, even the small and medium enterprises have decided to do digital transformation. Digital transformation has worked quite well in the services industry, especially because of the affordability. No capital dollars are needed. You have cloud computing, you have the Zoom webinars like what we are doing, etc., and the workflow continues. So digital transformation will bring about significant couple of changes. There will be a shortage of workers. Very true. There'll be in the beginning, there'll be a shortage of workers or employment, surprisingly, and in the longer run, work will be more automated. There'll be more automation for efficiency, productivity, and therefore countries that rely on labor will get more impacted in the process than countries that don't rely on labor primarily. It's like same thing happened after the energy crisis for the automation of the automobile industry. Robots took over afterwards, essentially, because of the union issues and everything else. So that's clearly one key area. And the last area that I think will be happening in the workplace is that people will be demanding, not the employer, but the people will be demanding, I can work from anywhere, especially for professional services. And I think there was a recent announcement by companies like IBM that they expect only 20% of the workforce to come to an office place, a workplace. 80% will be working remotely someplace. And how do you organize that flow? So you need not only the physical infrastructure, logistics for products, but you also need the IT infrastructure, information highways on a worldwide basis. And how do you create that properly? It'll be time. So that will be in the workplace primarily. I also believe, surprisingly, the rise will be of the gig economy, like Uber. I think there'll be more because people will decide, I'm very comfortable working from anywhere. Why should I then agree? So I would say, sign me as a contractor. So we see the rise of contractor market more than just the employment market. And I think it's a kind of a win-win between the employee and the the employer or the corporation. So we'll see some architecture there that'll be differently. And the last comment I will make has to do with the geopolitics. Every major event that persists, like we said, Great Depression, World War II, there's a complete restructuring of the global economy. And here are a couple of things. First major impact will be the Brexit. Brexit is here today. So the British economy, which is pretty significant economy, is going to decide how to distance from European Union and where to align. My forecast is that the British economy will align much more strongly with the US economy as economic partners. This was advocated by the previous administration on both sides, and I think the dialogue will continue. British economy also will align very much back to the Commonwealth nations. So that includes Canada, Australia, India, parts of Africa. That's very key It's a very large economy to have a significant impact on the geopolitics of the world, just on the economic side. I also believe that there will be a new triad power. The old triad power used to be in North America, US and Canada, the 12 Western Common European Market countries, and Japan. As of 1987, they had about 75% of the world economy, GDP was created, about 45% of all the trade was done, the rest was with their former colonies. This has been shifting since the collapse of communism, WTO that came in, liberalization of the markets, China opening up quite a lot, both as a sourcing destination, but also as a market destination kind of thing. So the new triad power is surprisingly will be US, China, and India. And the reason is that these are the three largest consumer economies if you measure on a purchasing power parity basis, which I believe is a better measure than currency exchange measures. So China is today more than $30 trillion. US is about $28 trillion or $24 trillion. And now India is surprisingly $11 trillion. And the question is how these three triad powers will behave with each other. There are tensions among all of them, for example, and therefore in any kind of a trilateral relationship, there's always the possibility of two getting together as allies or partners to compete or to rival against the other. And that is the tension that we are watching right now between China and India, China and America and India. It seems like the way the market is going right now, India and America will partner more and more because they depend heavily on services each other. So I think so that will be a very key area. And I do believe that each one will be so interdependent on the other that despite all the tensions, there will be a rivalry among the three, clearly, with India becoming the most strategic nation, try to balance the two sides pretty much. But there are also some unfortunate events taking place. As Asia becomes the center of attention in this century, as America was the center of attention last century, that includes the ASEAN bloc, obviously, China definitely, India I include as a part of that architecture, but you have Japan and South Korea, you have Australia. It's a pretty large bloc. The trade within the bloc is the largest and will increase even more post-pandemic. It'll become the largest growth engine in many ways in GDP if all these nations understand market processes can be put together, infrastructure investments can take place, and because of that, they will have an enormous economic power, maybe political power in the process, and definitely military power. So given that kind of architecture, I'm watching as to how that will impact post-pandemic new world altogether or a new world order. And I just hope that it is a new world order that benefits all citizens of the world, not just some countries or the other countries. I will stop here. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or my colleague can go on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheth. So now we're very fortunate to have Dr. Sheb Chu, AVP, Division of Global Affairs, Dean, Graduate College and Professional Education. He has so many hats, I cannot even remember, but he is the VIP of Kennesaw State. He is here to provide a vision of future KSU's global exchange and KSU's relationship with Asia, related to Asian studies and study abroad to Asia. Dr. Chu, please.
Well, thank you very much, May. It's certainly an honor to be here. I've done a lot of conferences, and I've always learned that you don't want to follow Jag Sheth. So I got the worst slot, I think, of the whole day. I've really enjoyed listening and watching the speakers all day today. And, I'm just, if I could kind of really, synthesize what everybody's talked about, the common element I found today was just an old story I have that kind of relates to the main point. I remember my son, when he was smaller, his grandfather gave him this hammer and a toolbox for Christmas. And he was just so very happy that he got this hammer and this toolbox that, I went out one day to work on the window. He said, "What are you doing, Dad?" And I said, "I'm gonna gotta fix this window. It's stuck." He said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Well, absolutely." And he came out there, and the first thing he did was grab that hammer, and he was ready just to start hitting away. And I said, "No, no, no. All we need is a little bit of oil and a screwdriver for this nut, and it all works." And I tried to teach him that thing that I teach my executive MBA students and our MBA students. Say, if the only thing you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything in the world looks like a nail, right? And so I think that that's something that we've learned the last 18 months, through the pandemic, the last year at the university. I think all academia has really embraced it. I think hopefully good for Kennesaw is that we have more in our toolbox than just a hammer. This online environment, this virtual teaming, this building relationships a long distance at Kennesaw State has not been just built upon being there, right? We've been doing virtual teaching, online teaching, virtual relationships for about 23 years with Romania. And that's just in the College of Business. In my graduate seat, I've got to see all the other great things that we're doing across campus. So this past year, even though we had to shut down study abroad exchange programs, we've had 10 virtual study abroad programs that I was quite skeptical about at first, but they've turned out to be just, I think, great successes due to our faculty's commitment and the relationships they had with partners, with universities and businesses in Europe and in Asia. And so we've continued that process. Right before COVID hit, we were actually increasing our influence and our focus on Asia. I can say in the last year, we've had 800 more applications from India than we've ever had.
Wow.
This coming fall, we have 300 more than we've ever had. And that's because of relations we hit. Now, of course, all of those students wanted to come to our graduate programs, and because of problems with the visas, and shutting down, that slowed down. We were able to get some through. We're very busy right now processing for the summer and for the fall. But I think what we did really well is we convinced, I think, I'm a marketing guy, we convinced those students that, look, coming to the US, being here on campus, we think is the best thing to do. But if you can't be here, the next best thing is to participate, with us through online. So you can still learn from our professors and have peers, and maybe in the future we can do that. We've had a lot of them do that. You had Dean Ian Ferguson on here earlier speaking. All of their graduate programs are online, and so we're looking to take that engineering degrees, take it too. And I think that's what we've really learned is that in the old days you built a university and you waited people to come to us. Perhaps your non-traditionals, your for-profit universities in the past were the ones really reaching out. But we've seen Arizona State, Duke, and other schools, flagship schools in the last few years help legitimize, I think, around the world. So Kennesaw's been poised to take advantage of that. And so I think that's really the future where we're going. We have a beautiful campus. We want to show it off. We want everybody to be here. But you don't have to be here 100% of the time. I mean, we want to figure out how to, bring people on campus when they need to be here. What is important for them to be here and actually touching, and when can we communicate it online, and also get our faculty out and create these relationships. So it's not just a one way, it's a three-way. What's best for us, what's best for the students, and what's best for our partner institutions. I think that's the direction we're going. And you look at an academia, all the universities they're talking about, that's the direction they're going. But the other theme I saw today was about partnerships and relationships, of course. We've always known that's important in business, period, particularly outside the US, right? And working with our international partners and in Asia. And we feel blessed that we've really had those. It's as a business faculty member, it's creating more competition, right? And I like that. I think competition drives the best of us. I think we've done that really well, where we compete with more than just Georgia Tech and Emory and Georgia State, but it's a larger competitive base out there. And the strong schools will get through this. And strong doesn't mean large. I used to say that a lot when we were small, but now we're so big. I like to say that size matters. But it's really it's about the strength of your relationships and your commitment. And, President Witt was on here earlier. Again, I've been here at 23 years at Kennesaw, and I've liked our deans and our presidents we work with. But I can tell you, President Witten is the right person for the right time for us. She has a commitment to what Kennesaw is going to do and how we're going to compete by putting students first. And it's the students here and the students around the world. And I think our faculty, our administrators have really adjusted that, and our partners here. So I could go on and sell Kennesaw, I guess, for a long time. But, I think it's not just us. It's our partner schools, our sister schools here in Atlanta, but also across the country that are realizing, that America's a great place, but there's great places out there, and not everybody wants to come here forever anymore.
Right.
There is this great return of students who graduate from our institutions who want to go back home because they see the greatness in their country and how they can survive. And we're actually seeing that now, is that we're grabbing alumni who graduated from a U.S. school, whether it was Kennesaw, Emory, wherever. They're back in their home country in Asia. And instead of trying to convince them to come back to the U.S. to live here for a graduate degree, they want to stay there, but they still want a U.S. degree. And so they're willing to do more online programs, and which is, I think, it's just better it's a win-win for everybody. I'll kind of stop there and just, again, thank SAUPO for, involving Kennesaw State so much and what you've done over the years. And we look forward to being a partner.
Thank you so much. As you can see, Dr. Sheb is a true businessman, and he is the right person to be in charge of international exchange, because he's always think of win-win-win for everyone involved. And also he mentioned that we have an increase of incoming students from India. And I want to thank the audience today for sitting through almost 3 hours. And during the pandemic, that's rare. And so I would say that you need to go out and take a break. Thank you so much. And this concludes our SAUPO webinar, SAUPO-Zoom webinar today. This is the first time we are hosting it. It looks like it's successful, and we may do it again in the future. And you all will be invited to come back to share your insights, expertise, and wisdom. Thank you so much. Thank you for my colleagues in the SAUPO Planning Committee. And thank you to all the speakers, sponsors. Thank you to our audience from all over the world. And in fact, some of the questions that you answered are from speakers, are from audience in Chicago, and California, and one from China. So thank you so much. And we will hopefully see you in person next time. Next year, we have booked a space in Renaissance Atlanta Waverly Hotel on April the 8th, Friday next year. Please mark on your calendar. and we will all go out to get the vaccine shots, and we will make sure that it's safe to meet. Goodbye, everyone. And
bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Gao.
Bye.
Thank you, May. Great
Bye.
stuff.
Thank you to our audience. Some of them are still here.